Yo, what's up guys? Aiden here. So today in this video, I'm going to show you how I made $1,400 trading stocks. I traded KDLY as a first green day. Anyone new to the channel, please, if you don't know what a first green day is, please watch the video linked in the description first. Just for full transparency, I am still currently down on the week. I'm down about $400. So prior to today, I was down 1,700. So I've made most of that loss back today. If there was good lessons for me to share with you in regards to the losses that I've taken, I would share them, like no problem with that. However, the losses that I took, there's nothing really to show. It was just a complete lack of discipline and over trading. I know that I am sort of prone to that, and it sort of kills me when I do it because it's just such graft to make that money back. But it is what it is. I still do that from time to time. The safety net that I have in place is a cash account. So I know when I've got no cash in my account, I'll just stop trading, which is ultimately what it took for me to step away. So yeah, I'm not proud of that at all, really. I had been trading so well. I think a little bit of overconfidence stepped in, and it is what it is. I actually I sat down at the computer in the morning, and I knew I was going to have a red day. As soon as I looked at the scan, I'd been taking a little bit of time off, trading like a sniper. All of a sudden, I saw the market heat up, sat down at the computer, saw a really busy scan, but nothing that I knew how to trade. I had no edge there. And I knew I could just feel the FOMO, like the impulse that I had to take something. And I wasn't able to, I went with that, even though I was aware that I was going to have a red day. So it is what it is. You just kind of got to go through these things until hopefully they lose all power over us. So, KDLY first green day, very tricky one of the more tricky ones that I've traded in my career. Let's have a look. All right, so where are we? KDLY is the ticker that I traded the first green day. So, as always, let's start with the daily chart. Now, the reason that conviction wasn't super high on this one was this is not the kind of action I like to see for a first green day. I like this run up to be much stronger than that. So this is typically something that I would ignore for a first green day. I'm not looking to trade something that's just had a morning, like a pre-market spike, or just even a morning spike really, but definitely not a pre-market spike. And we can see here that all this did was had like a huge pre-market spike. The reason that I kind of thought, well, maybe it's worth a shot is because it was a pretty exceptional morning pre-market spike. It was 700%. It's still not a crazy amount. Like what was that other one? Was it BTOG or something like that? This one had a morning spike back in the day, a couple of months ago. Now that's a morning spike, 17 cents up to $2.17. So what's that? What's that? 1,000% or something like that. Let's have a look. 217 minus 7 divided by, yes, about 1,200%. And I did sort of look for a first green day on this. I missed the entry. But yeah, there are exceptions to the rule in terms of looking for, a first green day in relation to how strong the run up is, and kind of felt like KDLY just about qualified in my book. Somebody else might look at it differently and say, it's definitely worth it. But for me, like I say, I want the run up to be a bit stronger. So how I traded this one. So this is tricky again, because the run up was not great. And also because this ticker, you have to be able to assess what, where is this going to be the bounce day? Okay, and one of the ways in doing that is to look how the stock has behaved on previous days and look to see like the basing action, which you can see it's got basing action here. But it also had a tendency to have pre-market spikes and then fail. So we can see here it had a pre-market spike. This is actually, I guess, first red day, but it had a nice bounce here, pre-market spike. Looked like it was going to sort of almost have a continue. Well, I don't know. It was definitely backside here. Well, it looked to be backside here, but yeah, it had this pre-market push and then opened red, and here it had a little pre-market push and then opened red. It didn't quite go green here, but it it tried to have a little pre-market push. And so when it had this pre-market push here, and here, I did think, well, actually, maybe it's just, doing what it's done on previous days. However, what I did recognize is that the pre-market push here, let me just delete that and delete that. The pre-market push here, the volume is higher here than what it's done pre-market on any other day. Okay, so here definitely higher than this day and higher than this day as well. So that kind of made me think, well, actually, maybe this, because obviously when you see higher volume come in and lining up with a potential first green day, that's like a real sign to me that it helps me to build conviction. So I was keeping a close eye on this here. However, I didn't. So I normally try and get in sort of like as close to risk as possible. But here, I didn't. I can trade here with E-Trade because it's 7 o'clock. But I kind of, even though it's had a push here, I just wasn't. I wasn't too into it. I wanted to kind of see how it opened. And so for me, if the trend change on this one would be if it opened green, because previously we can see gap down, open red, gap down, open red. So remember these days all had little pre-market pushes and then open red. So here I didn't want to get too on today. I didn't want to get too sort of like, I didn't want to believe too much in the pre-market spike. Even though the volume was higher, I still wanted to see that it would open green and therefore indicate a potential trend change, which is what it did. It opened green here. And my plan, I was obviously going to have to risk off this level, which is, again, one of the reasons why for me it's tricky, because I'm often, I can't say normally, but often I'm buying right down here. My risk is so tight. So this is like a 12% risk for me, and that's sort of plus slippage. So maybe 15, maybe a bit more with slippage. So this is kind of a lot wider than I would have liked, but I was looking for any sort of pull pre-market and to get in. And so when I saw that pull, I got in at 8.35 and ended up taking off half the position here. Just because it just looked so heavy. It just looked so heavy. And then when it had this pull and it cut lower day, I just cut the rest of my trade and made about $300 on that. However, when it didn't really break convincingly and came back around this area, I sort of reassessed the chart and I said to myself, look, at this point we can see that volume, I don't know if you can see with my head on the way. Let's go to the 5-minute chart. At this point here, so let's say we're up to about 10 a.m. Well, about 9:55 here. So the volume here is significantly higher than anything it's done on the last 2 days. So that made me think, hang on. I looked at this chart with fresh eyes and said, look, the volume is key. You probably heard the phrase volume is king, and that certainly is the case here. So I just thought, get back in. When I saw the volume, it really helps to build conviction. So I got back in, pretty decent size, and I actually had some bad ads actually, just around 9, a little bit too close to high day. But I just looked at the volume and I just said, you know what, this is going to go. And when I get back in at this point, really, I still need to risk off this lower day because it can come down, hold this, and my thesis is still intact. But I just decided I was going to risk off the new low that it had set here. So that's a bit of a wishy-washy level to choose. And if you do something like that yourself, you definitely risk getting shaken out. So probably wouldn't follow my lead on that one. It'd be better to size in, accepting this is your risk and therefore sizing accordingly. But I just wanted to take bigger size and just have a tighter risk. I just thought, you know what, if I get shaken out, I get shaken out. Regarding sells, these are the levels that I drew on beforehand, this one and this one. I took too much of my position off around 10 as usual. Actually, I didn't. What I did, I took off a small piece, and then when I saw it coming down and looking weak, I started to get a bit scared, and I sold quite a lot of my position here. And then I did hold a bit, which I was quite pleased with. My best sale was just over 12. But yeah, I guess really, I just need to remind myself, which I always do, that stock isn't sometimes they do, but it's unlikely that it's just going to go straight up to your price target. Sometimes you do see that explosion, but more often than not, they're going to have a pullback. So, I just start looking at the PLL and just like randomly setting a level and saying, well, if it breaks this, it's the trade's over. And I was thinking, well, 10, it's not held 10, and stocks, yeah, the market makers are playing with me, I think. But yeah, they know how to play with your emotions at the same time. My entry is pretty good. I should be able to hold through things like that. So I am working on that. But yeah, overall, I took another 1100 on this. So finishing the day currently 1400 in profit. Yeah, so feel like I'm getting a bit predictable here because all I'm just doing is first green days. But I suppose you only need one setup to make good money. But yeah, if you've got any questions, put them in the comments below and I'll get back to you. Nice one. Bye-bye.